How medieval farmers survived brutal freezing winters wasn't just a story of cold weather. It was a fight for survival. And if you think modern winters are tough, you have no idea what these people endured. Because one bad decision could mean starvation, sickness, or death. And yet somehow they survived year after year with no heaters, no electricity, and no supermarkets. So imagine this. It's the middle of winter in medieval Europe. The ground is frozen solid, the sun barely rises, food is running out, and a farmer's family is depending on whatever he prepared months ago, because now it's too late to grow anything, too late to hunt properly, and too late to make mistakes. So the real question is, how did they stay alive? First, everything depended on preparation. Because winter wasn't a surprise, it was a yearly enemy, and smart farmers spent the entire summer and autumn storing food like their lives depended on it, because they literally did. Grains were dried and locked in barns, vegetables were buried underground in root cellars where the cold air kept them fresh, and meat was salted or smoked so it wouldn't rot. But here's the scary part. If even one storage area failed, the whole family could starve, and that fear followed them every single night. Then came the animals, because livestock wasn't just food, it was heat, survival, and future wealth. So farmers kept cows, sheep, and goats close to their homes, sometimes even inside the same building, because animal body heat helped warm the air. And yes, it smelled terrible, but warmth was more important than comfort when freezing winds were trying to kill you. And just when you think the cold was the worst enemy, sickness made everything even deadlier, because malnutrition weakened the body, infections spread fast, and doctors didn't exist the way they do today. So families relied on herbal remedies, prayer, and pure luck. But winter still wasn't only about survival. It was about endurance, because the long dark nights messed with the mind. Depression was real, and boredom was dangerous. So people told stories, sang songs, and worked indoors making tools, clothes, and repairs, because staying busy meant staying sane. And here's a twist. Most people don't expect. Winter also brought opportunity, because frozen roads made travel easier, allowing traders to move goods and farmers to earn extra money, while ice itself was cut from rivers and stored for summer use. But the real secret weapon wasn't food or fire, it was community, because no medieval farmer survived alone. Neighbors shared supplies, helped rebuild damaged homes, and protected each other from hunger and danger. And when someone ran out of food, others stepped in, because tomorrow it could be them. And that shared struggle created bonds stronger than steel. But here's the powerful truth most history books skip. Medieval farmers didn't survive because they were lucky. They survived because they were prepared, disciplined, and united. Every seed planted, every log chopped, every barrel sealed was a promise to their future selves. And while modern life gives us comfort, heating, and endless food, those farmers taught us something timeless. Survival isn't about technology. It's about resilience, planning, and never taking warmth, food, or community for granted. The winter that broke the strongest farmers begins with a nightmare no medieval family ever wanted to face. The food stores were empty, the firewood was almost gone, and outside, the snow kept falling like the sky itself was trying to bury the world. Because some winters weren't just cold, they were killers, and when crops failed in summer, winter became a slow, silent execution, forcing families to make impossible choices, like watering down soup so it could feed more mouths, or selling their last animal just to buy a few sacks of grain. And imagine being a father, watching your children shiver in the dark, knowing you did everything right, yet still it wasn't enough, because medieval winters didn't care about effort. They only cared about survival, and when hunger took hold, people became desperate, eating bark, roots, and even mixing straw into bread just to feel full, while the weakest, the elderly, the sick, and the very young were the first to fade away. And here's the terrifying part. Death wasn't sudden, it was slow, silent, and unavoidable, because starvation didn't scream, it whispered. And every day it stole a little more strength, a little more hope, until families could barely stand. But hunger wasn't the only enemy, because cold itself was a weapon, freezing fingers, stiffening joints, and turning simple tasks into painful battles. And without proper clothing, frostbite could destroy hands and feet, making work impossible. And when work stopped, survival stopped. Yet somehow, people kept moving, wrapping themselves in layers of wool, animal skins, and anything that could block the wind, while homes were sealed with mud, straw, and cloth to trap every bit of warmth inside, because even one open crack could let death crawl in. And while the fire burned day and night, smoke filled the rooms, burning eyes and lungs. But fresh air was a luxury no one could afford, because warmth mattered more than comfort. And just when the cold seemed unbeatable, another threat arrived: isolation. Because snow buried roads, storms trapped villages, and families could go weeks without seeing another human face. And loneliness became as dangerous as hunger, pushing people into despair, making them question if spring would ever come. So they turned to faith, believing winter was a test from God, a punishment, or a trial of strength. And churches became places of hope, where people prayed not for wealth but for survival, for one more sunrise, one more warm meal, one more chance to see green fields again. And here's a twist few expect: some winters actually made farmers stronger, because extreme hardship forced innovation, pushing people to improve storage, build better shelters, and create smarter farming methods. And every brutal winter became a lesson written in ice, teaching them how to prepare better next time. And slowly, generation by generation, survival knowledge passed down like a sacred inheritance. But even with preparation, disasters still struck, because medieval life was fragile, and one bad season could destroy years of effort, forcing families to abandon their land and search for work elsewhere, becoming wanderers in a frozen world, hoping to find food, shelter, or mercy. And when they reached towns, they often found more suffering, because cities were crowded, dirty, and filled with disease, proving that winter didn't just test farmers, it tested humanity itself. Yet in the middle of all this darkness, something powerful survived: hope, because people still told stories of warm summers, golden harvests, and brighter days, reminding each other that winter was temporary, even when it felt endless. And that belief kept them alive when food couldn't. And here's the final truth most people never realize: medieval farmers didn't just survive winter, they fought it with every ounce of strength they had, not with technology, not with comfort, but with courage, preparation, and unbreakable will. And the reason their story still matters today is because it proves one timeless lesson: no matter how harsh the season, no matter how cold the world becomes, humans survive by adapting, enduring, and never giving up, because winter always ends, and spring always comes. When winter turned into a monster begins with the kind of cold that didn't just freeze the land, but froze hope itself, because some medieval winters were so brutal that even the strongest farmers, the most prepared families, and the toughest animals simply couldn't endure them. And when the snow fell for weeks without stopping, burying homes, crushing roofs, and sealing villages off from the outside world, survival stopped being about comfort and started being about sheer endurance, because firewood vanished fast, food stores shrank daily, and every meal felt like a countdown towards starvation, forcing families to make choices no human should ever have to make, like who eats today and who goes without. And when the bread ran out, people turned to anything they could chew, grinding dried grass, tree bark, and even leather into powder just to trick their stomachs into feeling full, while parents lied to their children, promising tomorrow would be better even when they knew it wouldn't. And the cold itself became an invisible killer, creeping into fingers, toes, and lungs, turning frostbite into infection, infection into death. And without proper medicine, even a small injury could become a fatal sentence. And as bodies weakened, so did spirits, because hunger doesn't just destroy the body, it attacks the mind, making people restless, hopeless, and desperate. And when hope fades, danger grows, because history tells us that in the darkest winters, crime increased, neighbors stole from neighbors, and survival pushed morality to its limits. Yet at the same time, acts of unbelievable kindness also appeared, with families sharing their last scraps of food, strangers offering shelter, and communities standing together against the cold, proving that winter didn't just reveal weakness, it revealed humanity. And here's the twist most people never hear: medieval farmers didn't just fight winter with food and fire, they fought it with knowledge, because over generations they learned exactly how to prepare for the worst, building deeper root cellars that stayed above freezing, creating thicker clothing from layered wool and mal fur, and designing homes with smaller windows and lower ceilings to trap heat, while barns were placed strategically to block icy winds. And even the layout of villages was shaped by winter survival. But no matter how smart they became, nature always had the final word, because when the Little Ice Age struck Europe, bringing colder temperatures, shorter summers, and failed harvests, millions suffered, and famine became a regular visitor, turning once stable farming communities into fragile systems always one bad season away from collapse. And when crops failed, Farmers were forced to borrow grain, sell land, or work for lords just to survive, locking them into cycles of poverty that lasted generations. Yet somehow, even in these frozen centuries, life continued. Babies were born, fields were replanted, and hope refused to die. Because humans are wired to believe in tomorrow, even when today is unbearable, and the long winter nights became moments of connection, where families gathered around weak fires, telling stories of warmer days, heroic ancestors and future harvests, because imagination was their escape when reality became too harsh. And here's a shocking truth. Winter also shaped the personality of entire cultures, making people tougher, more patient, and deeply connected to the rhythm of the seasons, teaching them that survival wasn't about speed, it was about endurance. And while modern society fears inconvenience, medieval farmers faced extinction and still stew. Detour. And the real secret to their survival wasn't strength, wealth, or luck. It was adaptability, because they learned to bend without breaking, to endure without surrendering, and to prepare even when the future was uncertain. And that lesson still matters today, because while our winters are warmer, our challenges are different. But the core rule of survival hasn't changed. Those who plan, who cooperate, and who never lose hope are the ones who make it through the storm. And just like every medieval winter eventually gave way to spring, every hardship in life carries the promise of renewal, reminding us that even the coldest seasons can't freeze the human spirit forever. The winter that changed everything forever begins with a chilling truth most people never think about. Not every medieval farmer survived, and some winters were so merciless that entire villages vanished from history, buried under snow, famine, and silence. Because when the cold became unstoppable and food ran out completely, survival stopped being a struggle and became a question of fate. As families watched their barns empty, their animals collapse, and their children grow weaker with each passing day, while the wind howled like a warning that spring might never come. And in those final weeks, hope became the rarest resource of all, because even the strongest souls began to doubt the sun would ever warm the frozen earth again. Yet in the middle of this darkness, something extraordinary happened. Something that would shape the future of farming forever. Because the farmers who survived these nightmare winters didn't just endure them, they learned from them, and every tragedy became a lesson carved into memory, teaching them what worked, what failed, and what must never be repeated. So they redesigned their lives around winter itself, building smarter homes with thicker walls, smaller windows, and better insulation using mud, straw, and timber, while fireplaces were improved to burn longer and hotter with less fuel. And food storage became a science, not a guess, as grain was sealed in dry containers, root cellars were dug deeper, and smoking, salting, and fermenting food turned into life-saving traditions passed down through generations. And even clothing evolved, with layered wool, fur linings, and tighter stitching to block deadly winds. Because warmth was no longer a comfort, it was a weapon against death. And here's the twist most people don't realize. Winter didn't just reshape farming, it reshaped human behavior, because communities learned that isolation meant disaster. So cooperation became survival, neighbors shared food, tools, and shelter. Villages protected the weak, and no one faced the cold alone, because they knew that if one family fell, the others might follow. And this shared struggle built bonds stronger than iron, turning simple farmers into unbreakable communities. And while hunger still haunted them, it no longer ruled them, because preparation replaced panic, knowledge replaced fear, and tradition replaced chaos. Yet even with all these improvements, winter remained a ruthless enemy, testing each generation again and again. But something had changed. People were no longer helpless, they were resilient. And when snowstorms returned, families stayed calm, fires stayed lit, and food stayed on the table. Not because winter was kinder, but because humans had grown smarter. And that's the real legacy of medieval winter survival. Because it wasn't about comfort, it was about transformation. And here's the powerful reveal most history books never highlight. The modern world you live in today, with its food security, heated homes, and seasonal planning, exists because medieval farmers fought the cold with discipline, sacrifice, and unity. Their suffering built the foundation for smarter agriculture, better storage, and stronger communities. And every warm home, full pantry, and winter coat you enjoy is a silent tribute to their struggle. Because they didn't just survive winter, they conquered it with knowledge, resilience, and unbreakable human spirit, proving that no matter how brutal the season, humanity always finds a way to endure, adapt, and rise stronger than before.